Really excited to shift a little bit to move into transforming online higher education at scale, where leaders from Coursera, UNext, Newton, and UNIVO, moderated by our veteran speaker, David Blake of Degreed, will discuss scaling online higher education to meet global demand.
I have what is absolutely more questions than we have time, so I am going to get after it. But I would love to start with you. Clayton Christensen predicted online learning, in particular, threatens to disrupt the traditional university model significantly. Then here's his prediction. 15 years from now, more than half of the universities will be in bankruptcy. He said that about 12 years ago, and that really has largely not come to pass. What's your take?
Yeah, in my defense, we didn't say that, but I think over the past few years of our existence, I think we've realized more and more, our job really is to partner with universities and enable that process than to really compete, right? I mean, I think that's very clear. I mean, I think the story of online taking over universities and all of that, I think that's an older story really. It's about now figuring out what is the play for an online partner to work with universities and enable other things like access or internationalization or other things that we can solve for. And I think that's where we are going towards, and which is why I don't think this question no longer really makes that much sense now, because we end up working with universities around the world, both as content producers as well as universities consuming Coursera content as part of their own pedagogy and instruction design, right? So I think, so it is really about in partnership for all practical purposes. And of course, from our perspective, we do see a lot of industry also playing the role of an educator, not just by working directly with consumers and learners and universities, but also partnering with platforms like us, where industry is also a big partner in actually creating high quality content, so that the combination of industry, what universities produce on the platform, we take it to the rest of the world. So I think there's a real story there to be able to enable access for more universities. So that's my take there.
Appreciate that. And do intend to come back to, I've got a couple more questions going to come back to on that. But let's go over to Mike. So right now, Emeritus is reaching, we just heard, some of the scale that Emeritus is operating at. Has had great success working with universities. What has been sort of the emerging trend that has made partnering with universities work in your case? And what do you believe is going to significantly impact the future of learning and teaching at scale?
Let me sort of piggyback off the Clayton Christensen to say, and get into this question. You didn't happen to say that one of the reasons it hasn't come to pass is they're partnering with Coursera, with Emeritus, and with many of us. That was a stagnant view of where universities were 15 years ago. And Emeritus is an enabler of universities to reach new markets at scale with the highest quality education, as are many of us on the panel. So I think that was Clayton's fallacy 15 years ago, is just looking at where universities are without looking at the entire ecosystem. So happy to sort of be part of that ecosystem. My own background, I worked at both Columbia and Wharton with Emeritus from the university side. Now I'm on the Emeritus team delivering. And I think to think about the drivers of where change is coming, look at the three macro areas: demographics, technology, and policy. And then sort of subcategories within those that we're helping universities become more agile and adapt to are the demographics. Clearly the demographic cliff that the US and Europe and Japan and China are facing versus the demographic dividend that India, Southeast Asia, Africa, LATAM has. So where universities have been powerful in their traditional markets is no longer where they need to be for the future. Emeritus has been very helpful in that sense. Technology, we've had many panelists talk about AI, but where the deployment of AI comes into helping learners gain more from outstanding programs, whether they be Stanford, Emory, Bristol, LBS, Wharton, is how we can be a little more agile than a typical university can be in iterative experimentation with AI to make the learning more engaging. VR, AR, this is the other part that we're just getting into as an industry. That's going to be a trend that many of us will be engaged in, helping universities along the way. And then finally going to policy, obviously India's 2023 new education policy, the UK, I forget exactly what they call this, but the lifelong learning dividend is not the right term, but there's now a UK policy as of 2025. All UK citizens under the age of 60 can access up to £36,000 for lifelong learning, which is an incredible recognition by governments here in India, UK, many are to come, that it's about lifelong learning, continuous upskilling, reskilling, and how people are going to do that. It's going to be the individual. Hopefully they work for great employers who are going to invest in them. And I think that's where all of us can help out. So those are sort of the trends I see that are driving the changes that we face.
Very quickly, you mentioned Emeritus is able to at times be more iterative, agile in terms of the learning technology. You then said AR, VR. In the Emeritus programs, is Emeritus developing the content and the programming? Is the university developing the content and the programming? Or is it some sort of partnership in between?
It's a marriage of the two. And those who know Emeritus, we started with hyper elite brands. So oftentimes it was working with faculty who saw us as the translator of how to do this well and how to do this fast. So we were just better at guiding faculty to deliver online with efficacy and engagement. There's a lot of collaboration, co-creation that's going on right now. And the interesting thing is universities have gotten so much better than they were 4 years ago. Our game has to be that much better, because now most of our university partners are thinking about what part of the value stack do they keep in-house and what part of the value stack do they outsource to a team like Emeritus.
I'm going to ask this question so you can be pondering it, but then we'll maybe come back to it later. If Emeritus had launched not with the hyper-elite universities and had just developed that content and taken it to market yourselves with your own brand, where do you think Emeritus would be, and what does that say about higher education, credentials, brand, where the value is stored, what we're actually paying for? But
okay,
let that sit with you for a moment. Let me get, we've got our two Siddharths on our panel. So Newton, Siddharth, you all are really quite aligned with the market, with employment, and facing the market that way. How do you think that makes your model different? What does it make you have to optimize for? What does it make you good at? What does it create in your liabilities in your model? How do you foresee sort of your model working in the market into the foreseeable future?
Yeah. So when it comes to models like Newton, which are completely industry oriented, I think that puts in a clear distinct advantage for certain set of students. So for example, those who are graduating out of college or are entering college, and primarily for the purpose of getting great outcomes. So for them, our ability to completely orient our education towards education industry is a real big advantage. And what is happening is most of the things they are studying in their traditional colleges are simply not helping them get into the industry and operate in the industry. And that is why industry has to invest a lot into their training. So in India, most of the companies have their own training, especially for freshers. And that is where platforms like Newton come into the picture. And we enable not just students, but industry also to have a very ready talent. So I think platforms like us are going to be the future, especially of skilling education. And complemented with traditional education, I think this is going to play a very significant role in transforming how students get trained. Now, the advantage that we have is, one, we bring in a lot of tech into the play. So that allows us to monitor each student on scale. And that allows us to produce outcomes very quickly. So that is one significant advantage. I think, you also asked about what is different from traditional education. I think traditional education also has a lot of scope for exploring. The student can explore a lot of other things apart from what, the typical curriculum is. They can change their topics, they can, take up subjects from different departments. When it comes to skilling platforms, they have a clear objective in mind, which is the outcomes. And, that is limited to it. So that is, where traditional education really helps a student. So it allows them to explore really well what's happening in the market, apart from that as well. So basically they can, be a computer science engineer and also have a minor in, let's say, finance. So it allows them, that kind of freedom.
You said get to outcomes quicker. How long is the program? What is sort of start to finish in the student journey? How long?
So online programs are 8 to 12 months. But even in offline, because to make it, very outcome oriented, we keep it 18 months. So basically the student gets their first real industry internship, which is of 6 months, after 18 months of the program. And that is why, from day one, we are making sure that students are on the right track. We are tracking their journey. We are giving them the right kind of interventions. So I believe even for traditional education, thus it is very important to keep strong track of outcomes, and especially from day one.
So the one more quick question here. The original bootcamp model was really born with like a 3-month model. And we've seen a lot of the boot camps, that model doesn't, there's not a lot of 3-month boot camps anymore. It feels like it's just, the market has played out. It's proven that you need more time to get someone really sort of job ready, job qualified. But did you guys start with did you change that duration at all? Or what have you seen in terms of what it actually takes to get someone job ready?
Yeah. I think the length of the program is a very interesting challenge for any educational institution or platform. And over time, we have come to realize it's a factor of 3 things. One is the student quality and the knowledge that they have at the time of intake. Secondly, what is their objective? And third, basically, what kind of time do they have on hand? So for example, if someone is doing it full time, we can probably do the same program in 6 months as well. And if they have certain aptitude, they might take 6 months. Some people will take, let's say, 8 months or 12 months. And thus the length of the program varies according to it. The other thing is, for example, and that is why one important thing is to also have multiple exit points. So in our programs, we keep multiple exit points. So let's say in end of 6 months, you can take a certain kind of job. In another 6 months, you would have got further more skills, and that's when you can take, let's say, a higher category of job. So it really varies on the student to student. And 3 months, frankly, for any skilling program, I think only if they are doing full time and they already have a great aptitude, only then it works. Otherwise, you'll need to give flexibility, and even for the same intake, the best comes out if you are giving a certain time range. So, instead of saying that in 8 months only you have to complete it, or in 12 months only you have to complete it.
Thank you. All right, Ambrish, let's talk about access. Higher education has historically operated at some level on a model of sort of exclusivity and exclusion. When you want to make high quality education, accessibility part of your mission, what has that taken? How do you think about it? How do you get people to perceive kind of the quality in what you do? And how do you measure the success of this mission to create education that is accessible and affordable?
I think the way we look at it is, or the way I think about, I think your point on exclusivity of campuses, or the point that you touch for Emeritus, that if you launch with a hyper brand, how does it lead to adoption, etc. It's easier. So the way I look at it, and the way our experience in the last 3.5 years has been that, there will be a model for elite universities to continue to exist, where there will be some exclusions and they will lead to higher outcomes for the learners in terms of employability or placements. That model will exist. But if you have to solve the challenges of education at scale, or as the morning that we started with for a country like India, India has what, about 1,200 universities and about 40,000 colleges. But the employability is a challenge, which of course is a supply side issue also. So this problem of good quality education at affordable prices, what you have been able to do, I come with an e-commerce background, what you've been able to do in consumer retail side or other products has not happened in education. And I think with online education, especially high quality education being made affordable to the masses, for the programs which have an employment opportunity available in the current scheme of things, that will keep evolving. There was a wave during COVID where tech was the flavor of the season, emerging tech. Now things are a little different. So the way I look at it, launch affordable programs at affordable prices with trusted university brands, and that you will see the student not going to these long tail of colleges and wasting money there by not attending classes and just getting a degree. Instead, he or she will come online and experience good quality education, which will create opportunity. I'm not saying opportunity is in terms of employment, but get you the seat at the table. You are at this summit, you might make some use of it, but it's not that you will get a deal done, but the opportunity will be there. So I think that's what we are trying to solve for, and not being a monologue, but there are a lot of metrics that we track, that how many places our students come from. So we have students from about 3,000 plus towns and cities in India. We have about 40% of PIN codes covered for our learners, and our completion rates are close to 78%. We run a relationship NPS model to track the efficacy of the delivery of our programs. And there are a whole host of metrics that we track, because the education is a high trust business in a low trust society like India. You know, if you don't create the outcomes, you don't calculate how those outcomes are being measured, we will be doing a great disservice to the university brands that we partner with, and also to the campus students who are there in that university. So it's a big problem to solve, and yes, we are at it. Some good successes, many learnings.
You mentioned accessible programs, low cost, get it to market, to keep people out of the long tail, I think is what you said, the long tail of universities. Do you believe that there are some universities operating today that students shouldn't be going to, that they would be better off if we were to shut their doors and shut them down?
Yeah, it's not a very controversial statement, I hope, but there are universities in India where they should not exist, and yes, students are better off by not going there. And coming to online, where there are already very credible names which are providing high quality education, not only UNext, but others on the panel also, and some speakers in the morning. So I think that's the way it should be. Why should you get a substandard education because it is offline?
So last question here just quickly, but I think it's an interesting topic. I know what the dynamic is in America that is keeping students enrolling in universities that don't have positive learning outcomes, that don't have good ROI. It was this narrative of university at any cost. It was this narrative of university as the only pathway to the middle class and to good jobs. And for some students, just any university still feels like, you know, better than any alternative, and it sort of traps them in this. But what is the dynamic in India that keeps people enrolling in a university that, you know, might not have quality education, quality outcomes, you know, good ROI?
So I think in India also there is that problem where it's a large country, employment is an issue. All the parents want that their kids should go to a good university. Therefore, you see the test prep market in India is absolutely top of the line across the world. So that problem, of course, is there. And similar to US, in India also people want them to go to the college and get a degree and then get a job. But that's not happening. There is a regulatory framework which also kind of was done with a very noble thought, but has not been executed well. So the way I look at it is that use the power of internet, use the power of online, the way in India, because of the 4G rollout, technology being available, internet band speeds very high, you can take good quality universities at a very lower price point to these masses. So instead of they wasting their time not studying properly because the faculty is not trained, the labs are not there, What you can do is in online, all those problems can be solved at scale, and you still will get a degree, and you still have a shot at the job. And plus, in online, you can innovate the curriculum faster. You work with enterprise businesses, which give you lead indicators into what are the supply side challenges of jobs. And those innovations happen at scale. So the way I look at it is that only very high-end and top colleges will continue to thrive and prosper. There is no denying that, in my view. But, like I said, the long tail, like in the colleges which just exist to provide a degree because they got a license from the government of India to run a university, those will see, they will truly get extinct.
Appreciate it. All right. UNIVO, Siddharth. I appreciate you being patient. These panel formats, we are nearly halfway done and just getting you your first question. So I'm going to give you just one I hope you swing and just crack hard over the fences. But really, when you think about the future of higher education, what is UNIVO's vision? How are you going to transform it? What do you think the future looks like? What does good look like?
Thank you, David. I think going last and listening to a couple of eminent speakers on the panel also gives me some time to kind of compose my thoughts on this topic, and thank you for sharing this question as we were waiting for the session. I think pretty much it began in the morning when we had that opening session by our G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant, and where he was talking about India on the world stage. And I would argue India as a superpower in many areas, especially in education. So as I think about UNIVO or all of us gathered here for higher education, I'd like to think about it, and I love mental models, so I'd like to think about it in Simon Sinek's the why, the what, and the how.
Love it.
And if I were to think about the why does UNIVO exist? Why do a lot of the organizations here represented in the room really exist? I think we exist, or UNIVO exists, to solve one of the most compelling challenges of our times, which is to partner with the education ecosystem here on the government's ambitious agenda to double our gross enrollment ratio in higher education from 27% to 50% by 2035, which is 12 years out. And so therefore, we know that online higher education or quality online higher education will play a very important role. I'd like to think of UNIVO as a powerful catalyst partner in that journey. So that's why we exist. We exist to serve the education ecosystem of India, and the KPI for that is the gross enrollment ratio. That's why we exist. What do we do? It's pretty much embedded in the name UNIVO. So if you look at UNIVO and break it down by UNIV, which is university, and O is online. So we enable universities to go online, and we are a strong partner from them in terms of course content selection, to the whole student learning journey, to career readiness. And that's what we do. Now, that's not where we stop at. So I think the compelling challenge there is not to provide an online higher education degree, but a quality online higher education degree that really prepares students for their careers, their jobs, their lives. And I think that's what we measure ourselves on when we talk about outcomes. How do we do it? And as I was listening to some of your questions, I was kind of drawn back. I've spent many years at Hindustan Unilever, which is the India unit of Unilever. And there's this, the thought that has stayed with me is that India is not one India, but within India, there are many Indias. So the other way to think about it is that in India, in various product categories, in various areas of the economy, there can be a motorbike, there can be a Maruti, there can be a Mercedes, and there can be a Maserati. So when people think about India, I'd like people to think about the fact that you can create value in India at different price points and different need states. So how we do it at UNIVO in the field of high quality online education, which is degrees, is we make sure that there is a product offering for different kinds of user personas that exist in India. So this whole debate about, hey, is online education necessarily going to be low value or low unit price? I would just nuance it by saying that if we were to offer value at different price points and different parts of what the user really needs, we can build a strong and sustainable business. And that's really the how of what we try and attempt and do, and our contribution to online higher education.
I love hearing the trying to establish product experience at different price points to fit different demographics, not one India. Sort of inherent in that is this belief that we don't all need the exact same thing. And yet, I find when I listen to that, I wondered to myself, why did I get invited to moderate this panel? I've made a career out of railing against the college degree. My mission is to jailbreak the degree. I think degrees suck. And here I am moderating a panel on the bastions of online degrees.
That's your punishment.
Probably is, yeah.
We call it karma in India.
I will be nicer on my next panel. So I want to follow this through a little bit. And I think an interesting way is, Bibin, Coursera, what is the mix now of the full online degrees, which you now offer, sort of the middle, the specialties, the kind of mid-range chunked products, and then the individual courses? If you split up that pie, what does that look like right now?
Yeah, so when you think about it, obviously Coursera as a platform began with the premise of MOOCs and individual courses, and then we moved into specializations and now full degrees, right? I mean, we have, but then also there is this whole enterprise side of things, which is the other piece, right? I mean, which is also a meaningful business right now, where we stack up all of these pieces into an offering for enterprises, whether they are universities or whether they are corporates looking for learning. So while still our mainstay is our consumer business at the lowest common denominator, which is the MOOCs, people continue to enroll in those courses, and that's really our mainstay. What is happening is these specializations, or today we have now sort of a slight pivot that we've given us to what we call them as professional certificates, where we are saying that we now to start to anchor more and more towards roles and skills required for specific job roles and things like that, and working much more with industry, right? So I think that is starting to grow quite significantly in terms of, I think, just in India, I think over the last year, we had about a 55% growth in enrollments just on the professional certificates. Because there is that, I mean, I think, which is why organizations like Newton and others are working to solve for that problem, the convergence of what industry is doing and what academia is doing. So that is the big shift happening from a Coursera perspective, but the MOOCs is still a mainstay. The degrees is a fast growing business, but it is still a smaller sized business in terms of our growth, in terms of size. The enterprise has grown significantly. Like we work with now about what, 7,000 campuses, 7,000 institutions around the world, which is about 3,000 campuses, to, almost close to 3,000 corporates around the world, where we work for actually delivering programs where, while they may not be the content producer, they actually consume the content. I mean, even universities, I think, like they consume content from us to actually enrich their own curricula and things like that. Especially the point that Ambrish was making, in India we have 40,000 institutions. When you talk about the long tail, I mean, there's no real way to change or transform institutions with a magic wand, right? I mean, one of the things that we are trying to do with those kind of institutions is to bring in the content from platforms like Coursera, high quality content, and build it into the curricula so that it becomes a much more meaningful experience for the student who's enrolling there, right? I mean, so there's some big shifts happening, and I think because of our focus and growth in enterprise and on degree credentials, I think those are the growth engines. MOOCs obviously continues to be our catchment, so to say, from a lower acquisition for these channels.
So let me just give an open question to all of you. Do we still need the college degree? And what have we learned? Talked a little bit, some of the clicked into the boot camp started at 3 months, but really there's very few 3-month boot camps left in the world. It's turned into 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. But a 4-year degree is 3-4 years, depending on where you're taking it in the world, or a bachelor's degree is 3 or 4 years. What is the right length of time for us to be engaged in high-intensity learning in a world where it's moving fast and we're going to have to be learning over the entirety of our lives? So what's the right duration? Is the degree a relic, or is it still needed? And if so, why? If not, you're correct.
Let me give a really quick just analogy. Obviously, I'm defending the degree as the foundation for, the 100-year life that many of our children are going to live, in which who knows how many economic booms and busts they're going to live through and how much agility they're going to need. But if you don't have a strong foundation, the analogy being architecture, the analogy being the foundation is what you build off of. And it's the updating, reskilling, forgetting that's going to be critical. So I think the foundation to launch is still there. And does the degree need to be 4 years? No. Could it be done in 12 months? Yes. Sort of what the degree evolves into, but we need something foundational. So yes, I think we need a degree.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So don't think of the degree as a degree, but I mean, it's not a brick wall, but think of it as Lego blocks. And so if the degree evolves, to your point, if the degree evolves, that's where we should maybe spend a little bit of our thinking time and focus on it. At UNIVO, our core thesis is exactly that innovate on the core. I mean, it's great, boot camps, you spoke about certifications, that's all great, but innovation on the core in itself, which is degrees, is going to be critical to a developing country like India, where there is a demographic dividend that we have, and there is a structured way of actually delivering high quality education through online means, which also implies that you could learn at your own pace. So am I really going to constrict people who want to do learning in 1 year rather than 3 years? Those are optionalities that open up if you were to take online higher education degree more seriously in terms of focus on it and resources on it and the continuing regulatory frameworks on it. And that is what makes this space so transformative for India.
My view is that degrees will continue to exist, and we should not look at degrees just as the word degrees, but what it does is basically it's credentializing your learning experience for a year, 2 year, 3 year, or whatever the time duration is, from a brand that has built over decades. And the university has spent not only money on research, innovation, learning outcomes. So all that is the distillation of that whole process which credentializes. So a brand like say in India, the IITs or the IIMs or other top brands, MIT, Manipal, some of us are here. In US, there are other brands. So therefore, that's very critical, point number one. The second point to your case is that how much time, in my personal belief, in the last 4 years, 5 years in the online education space, I think I have a theory on your bootcamp, but that's for a later time. But I think 18 months to 2 years is the right time for somebody to imbibe thorough knowledge, experiment with it, do a project, do a capstone project, can go out in the market to build a career for him or herself. So solve the supply side challenges of employment as well as contribute to the society. So I think that is the time. And boot camps, as you said, 90 days works only if the person is already immersed in that field of study. Otherwise, it's very difficult. We have courses saying, be a data scientist in 90 days. Come on. That guy has not even studied maths or statistics at undergrad, and that's not possible. So quick pointers to your 3 questions.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would want to add is, especially in a country like India, when you think about, especially undergrad, for example, students who come into undergrad, they're coming in from schooling in a very different kind of an environment where maybe even the choices are not being made by the student themselves, right? I mean, so I think there's a lot of time spent, especially in the initial entry into that undergrad degree, where institutions are actually building how to work in an environment like that. It's not even really the learning per se, right? I mean, it's not those subject areas and things like that. And I think we need to kind of figure out or do a lot more work before you come into a higher education institution for us for that to work, right? So I think that's something that we'll see more. I think with all of these newer regulations about entry, exit, I don't know from an implementation perspective how that will work out, but I think those are all pointing to signals of being personalized and building your own way of finding your path, right, as a learner. I mean, it doesn't have to be one way or the other, right? I mean, today degrees are like very held in, at least in countries like India, it's very static. 4 years, you go through that. With all of those newer regulations coming in, it might help in a different form of a degree. It may still be a credential, but yeah, it may be a different kind.
Well, I very much appreciate the insights from you all. I very much appreciate the work that you are all doing to make education accessible, to make education high quality, to make education affordable. I'm very excited and appreciative of the ways in which we are making higher education accessible to people over the entirety of their lives. I think that is critical. I think the one and done model is insufficient in today's world. So grateful to you all for the work you're doing. Please join me in a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.